Welcome to the Introverted Misfit podcast with me, Caroline Smith, where we discuss topics related to the human experience of connection and communication with a slightly awkward introverted twist. And today is a very exciting episode because it is New Year's Eve, which means that it is the last podcast episode of 2024, at least at the time that I'm sitting down to record this episode, which means that the year of 2024 is on its way out. And I almost can't even believe it because it feels like just yesterday it was January and I was just laying the groundwork for this coaching business and this podcast. But time really is just flying by, as it does. But because this is the time when we are all starting to create New Year's resolutions for ourselves, I wanted to share with you some more specific resolutions that I think can be helpful um, in helping you to improve your social life as an introvert, especially if you happen to be a shy or socially anxious, socially awkward introvert like I once used to be. But I want to start off with a story before I tell you exactly what the topics of today's episode are. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the story of Mohini the tiger, but I think it's a good example of what I'll be talking about in today's episode. In the 60s, President Eisenhower received a white tiger named Mohini as a gift. It was sent to live in the Washington Zoo. Back then, the cages were 3 by 3 meters and were made out of concrete and iron bars. People could see Mohini constantly and nervously pacing back and forth year after year. Well, all of that changed when the zoo received money from a sponsor who had decided that it was worth the trouble and investment to give Mohini a larger enclosure. The new area was around 5 square meters and it had hills, trees, waters, and an array of vegetation, all for Mohini to explore and take advantage of. Everybody was eager to see how Mohini would react to its new big and beautiful environment, so much so that even the press was invited to seize the joyful moments. Mohini entered its new reign, but it looked for the far corner of the new abode where it started pacing back and forth on a 3 by 3 meter area and kept pacing until the grass disappeared. Mohini did this until his death. The story of Mohini is deeply heartbreaking. It's the story of a beautiful and magnificent creature that is conditioned to walk in a 3 by 3 meter cage forever, even though it had plenty of space to roam. Moreover, it is very disturbing metaphor for those of us people who are not willing or able to break free from the imaginary mental cages that we often put ourselves in that I like to call limiting beliefs. So the more that we tell ourselves these limiting beliefs that keep us in these cages, the more and more that we are afraid to achieve our goals and leave our comfort zone, even if there's something wonderful waiting for us on the other side, just like Mohini. So with that, today's podcast episode is all about becoming a more socially confident introvert in 2025, and I'm going to split it into two main parts. The first part is going to be about 4 limiting beliefs that I believe all introverts should stop believing about themselves so that you can shift your mindset around being social to a more positive one. And the second part is going to be where you and I will sit down and come up with a game plan, a very simple yet useful game plan with specific steps on how you can be more social as an introvert in 2025. And I even have a free online template that I'm going to give you access to that you can fill out along with me as we are creating this game plan. And you can either fill it out on Google Docs, like on your Google Docs account, or you can actually print it out like I have here, and you can write on it like I plan on doing. But that is for later on in the episode, so I'm going to put that aside for now. And we're going to start with the 4 limiting beliefs that introverts should stop believing. Limiting beliefs are those negative thoughts that we have and those negative perceptions about ourselves that prevent us from reaching our full potential. For example, I used to have this negative perception about myself that no one would ever like me or want to be my friend. So as a result, I wouldn't even attempt to get close to people, or I would just not let them get close to me. And part of the reason was because I am autistic, which came with a whole other set of social and communication difficulties that just made socializing and making friends a lot more difficult. But I also think that the other part was that I am a naturally quiet, introverted person. And it didn't seem like people were drawn to that kind of energy, or at least not the kinds of people that I was surrounded by when I was a child and a teenager, um, and even a young adult in college. So, because of this limiting belief that I had about myself, which was that no one liked me or no one was going to like me, I was holding myself back from making valuable social connections and moving forward in my career and my business. I avoided social interactions because I was anticipating rejection before it would even happen. I was uncomfortable when people were nice to me because I didn't think that I could be as good of a friend to them as they could be to me. And overall, I was just already giving up on myself before I had even given people a chance to know me. And because of that, because that limiting belief that was just on my entire aura, it just screamed, I don't love myself and I don't respect myself. I believe that other people were reading that energy on me, which was essentially just repelling them further and further away from me. And in that way, it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that just kept me in this endless loop of being excluded and rejected. And that's what I believe limiting beliefs do to us. They make us believe that we can't do something, and therefore that outcome is more likely to become a reality. So let's dispel these four common limiting beliefs that I've noticed introverts sometimes have about themselves. Number one, your introverted qualities are not as valuable as extroverted qualities. This is a concept that I actually went over in a lot much greater detail in one of my earlier podcast episodes, which is titled The Valuable Role of Introverts in the Introvert-Extrovert Balance. But I'm going to give you the high points of that episode in this segment for this first point because I think it's really relevant. Introversion and extroversion exist on a spectrum of sorts, which means that just like each of us possess both introverted and extroverted characteristics to of varying degrees that we can decide when and when not to use, I think that society as a whole actually has a balance of introverted and extroverted qualities that both play important roles. And I think that because introverts and extroverts belong to this great balancing act, I don't think that one is any better or worse than the other. I think they're both important. Both are useful in the right time and place. And it's up to us as individuals on this spectrum to know our strengths, understand our weaknesses, and then learn how to adapt when necessary. Because ultimately, in some situation in your personal life or your professional life, you're going to have to know how to adapt, which is the hard truth. So, although it may be tempting to look at your extroverted counterparts and just see how easily that they can work a room and exude lively energy that attracts a lot of immediate attention, there is a lot of value in your preference for quiet time, alone time, time spent thinking very deeply about things, your introspective nature, your preference for one-on-one communication, or just, you know, um, socializing with just a few people at once rather than a lot of people at once, and however else introversion exists within you. And when you learn how to lean into those strengths and be adaptable when necessary, which may mean leaning into your inner extrovert sometimes, that's when you'll really see the value in your more introverted nature. I once had a conversation with someone who was telling me about his daughter, who was an introvert, and he told me that when he asks his daughter a question or wants to know her thoughts about something, she has a lot to say because she's usually spent so much time already thinking about it because she is an introvert. So, in that way, her introverted strengths are revealed through extroverted means of communication. And so, what I'm saying is that we are really just different sides of the same coin, but both personality traits are valuable. Number two, the second limiting belief, it's harder for introverts to find and keep friends. So I'm very active on Facebook these days in terms of my business, which, by the way, if you are not already following my Facebook page, you should check the description of this podcast episode and you can find that. Or you can just search for the Introverted Misfit in the search bar of Facebook, and it should pop up in the search results. But I'm very active on Facebook, and I am part of two very large introvert Facebook groups. And one common thing that I notice is that a lot of introverts in these groups will complain about not having any friends or not being able to easily make friends, and being really shy or having social anxiety. And they will often blame those things on being introverted. And as an introvert myself who used to struggle making and maintaining relationships, I now realize that friends are really no more harder for introverts to make than extroverts, which again we'll go over in the second part of this episode when we come up with our game plan. But in my experience, it's really about two very important things. Number one is going places that fit your personality and your communication style. And number two is then actually talking to people when you go to these places. Those are really the only two things that you need. So if you are a naturally quiet person and you decide to go out to clubs every weekend as your sole way of socializing, it probably is going to be harder for you to meet people that way because you are out of your element, especially if you're already shy and awkward in addition to being introverted. So I remember this one time that my cousin, who's basically like my best friend since childhood, she took me bar hopping for my birthday downtown where I live. And we must have been like 22 or 22 and 23 because she's 1 year younger than me. And I remember going to the first two bars, and the entire time I was so anxious about being there because number one, I still had social anxiety. And also it was just such a loud, overstimulating environment. Like there was a lot of loud music, there was a lot of people there, a lot of alcohol, a lot of groups of people who were already socializing, already playing pool and, huddled around and socializing and everything that people do at bars. And then we even pulled up to the third bar of the night, and I could not even go inside because I was just so tired from the first two, and I could hear the music in this place before we even pulled into the parking lot. It was so loud, and I just saw so many people there who I just knew I would not fit in with because of my quiet personality. So my point is, if you only go to places where there are too many people, lots of group conversations that you don't really know how to enter, and then lots of loud music and excitement that is just going to overwhelm you. In my experience, your confidence around socializing and making friends is going to take a hit because those environments are not ideal for your personality. So it's not more difficult to make friends. You just have to know yourself, know your limits, and you have to know which places are more conducive to your personality. Um, so yeah, that's the second one, is that it's harder for us to make and maintain friends. Now, the next two limiting beliefs are going to be specifically for all of you shy and socially awkward introverts who struggle with their social skills. But if that does not apply to you, I still want you to stick around for the game plan segment of this episode because I really think it's going to be helpful for any introvert out there who just wants to be more social. But number three, your social skills have to be 100% perfect all of the time. So the age old trap of perfectionism. Many of us tend to think that we have to do everything completely perfect and everything has to be 100% in place. Otherwise, it's not going to be good enough. So if we want to start a business, everything has to be 100% perfect in our lives. If we want to be in a relationship, we have to be 100%, the perfect person, the perfect relationship partner. If we want to make friends, we have to do everything 100% perfect. Otherwise, the other person is not going to like us. And in my experience, I have found that most times those things that we tell ourselves are not true. Nobody is perfect. None of us are perfect, and that's especially regarding our communication skills. Even people who are not introverted and are not shy and are not socially awkward, even they have, communication pitfalls sometimes in the workplace, in their relationships. None of us are immune to that. So there are going to be some awkward moments. There are going to be some times when you say or do the wrong thing and then you have to apologize for it. There are going to be times when you misread the situation. Um, Things like that happen to the best of us. And I know this firsthand, especially as an autistic woman who has basically struggled in this area for a large portion of my life. And even as socially confident as I am today, I still have not managed to be 100% perfect in every interaction. In fact, kind of the idea behind my podcast name and my business name, my coaching business, the Introverted Misfit, is kind of reclaiming the word misfit because I think at this point I've just realized that I'm never going to be 100% socially savvy. I'm always going to be, that same autistic kind of quirky woman, and that's just not going to change. But I think the only difference now is that those moments where things don't go as well as I wanted them to, they don't completely ruin my self-esteem and keep me from trying to socialize again like they used to, and they definitely used to. So, in last week's podcast episode, which was about how to overcome your fear of rejection, I talked more in depth about my experience with what's called rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD, which, if you're an autistic person, that might sound familiar to you, but it's not unique to autistic people. It's just that a lot of autistic people will experience this RSD. But it's basically an overreaction to perceived or actual rejection. In fact, I think the official definition describes it as being emotional pain in response to perceived or actual rejection, and it really does feel like that. So back when RSD was still pretty much ruining my social life, every little thing that someone said or did that I interpreted as rejection would make me feel so terrible about myself that I would just hide away for like hours or sometimes days, sometimes weeks, honestly. And I don't mean literally, hide away and never leave my house because I would still have to go to class and go to work and all of that stuff, go to the grocery store. But I would just be very socially withdrawn during that time. As I was going out on the town, I wouldn't talk to anyone. I wouldn't look anyone in the eye because I was just so those moments of what I interpreted as rejection just really got to me. And now that I have pretty much fully accepted myself in all of my communication strengths and flaws, those awkward and cringy moments that happen, they may bother me for a little while, but they no longer send me into hiding for days on end like they used to. And that is where I wish for you to be, especially if you're not completely there yet as an introvert. And it is possible, trust me. And finally, the fourth limiting belief is that introverted automatically means you are shy and socially awkward. This limiting belief comes up a lot on my podcast because it is a common misconception that I think is important to dispel. And just like the number two limiting belief that we just went over, this is also one that I see a lot in the Facebook groups. Um, Pretty much every day. There's always going to be a few posts a day in those Facebook groups that are falsely equating introverted with shy, socially anxious, socially awkward. So it is possible to be introverted, shy, socially awkward, or any combination of the three for different reasons. Um, but not all introverts are shy and awkward. An introvert is someone who is more reserved and quiet, tends to be more introspective, and enjoys spending more time alone than with others. A shy person is someone who is nervous or timid in the company of other people. And social anxiety, which is a little more severe than shyness, is a mental health condition in which the person has an irrational fear of interacting with others. Social awkwardness is a pattern of difficulty communicating and engaging with others in social situations. And it can make it really hard to understand social norms, body language, social cues, and all of that can lead to anxiety and discomfort around socializing. So that's how they're different in their own way. They're not the same thing, but I can see why people may get them confused a lot because you go to a party or a networking event or something like that, and you see someone sitting in the corner by themselves and they're being, very introverted and socially withdrawn. And you might just assume that they are only doing that because they don't know how to talk to people or they're scared of talking to people. But not every introvert is socially withdrawn because they struggle with socializing. And I think that's a very important distinction. It is possible to be a socially confident introvert who simply prefers communication styles and social environments that are just more conducive to your introverted personality. It does not necessarily mean that you're scared of people, scared of talking to people, or don't know how to talk to people. So, those are the four limiting beliefs that I wish and I hope every introvert is not going to bring into the new year because I know firsthand just how many opportunities and connections these beliefs are preventing you from experiencing. Just in my own life, it was keeping me from making a lot of valuable friends, from dating, um, making business connections, especially as a fairly new entrepreneur in my coaching business, and then moving forward in my 9 to 5 job as a web developer. So, in fact, I just told the story of how becoming a socially confident introvert actually led to me getting a salary increase in one of my more recent podcast episodes. I think it was maybe about 2 weeks ago, but I'll link that in the description if you want to check that out. So now that we have gone over those limiting beliefs and planted the seeds of overcoming those in your mind, hopefully that will grow into, more fruitful beliefs about yourselves in this coming year. I want us to come up with your specific game plan for being more social as an introvert. So let's move on to the 2025 game plan. So, as I showed you earlier, I have actually printed my template out. Here it is, but you can check the description to download the template yourself. Or actually, you can just go directly to the link, theintrovertedmisfit.com/game plan. And that is going to show you the form that you need to fill out in order to get access to the template. And it might take you a minute because you do have to click on the link and then enter your email to get it. But you'll get it immediately once you enter your name and your email. So, you can pause this episode and then come back when you have it open in a separate tab, or if you want to print it out, or you can just, watch me fill out mine and then fill yours out afterwards. So there are 5 steps in this game plan. The first step is to write down your communication strengths and preferences. So for me, mine are one-on-one communication. Or actually, it doesn't just have to be one-on-one communication. It can be a few people at a time. And I do think that I'm getting a lot better at group discussions and group conversations, especially since I'm over my social anxiety now. But I still say that I'm a lot more comfortable with just one or two people. So I'm going to say one-on-one communication or small groups, because small groups are good for me. Let's see. Other communication strengths. I enjoy deep discussions and actually thinking deeply about a lot of different things just on my own. But I also find that I don't really mind lighthearted conversations every now and then. So I think I'm pretty flexible in that area. So I'm gonna write down enjoys both deep and lighthearted discussions. And then also, I would say that in this stage of my life, I actually enjoy, you know, well, I'll say I'm not afraid of controversial topics and conflicting opinions. I'm more open to having them now. That they used to really freak me out when I still had social anxiety because sometimes those discussions can turn into, you know, people yelling and getting really in their feelings and stuff, which is very triggering for me and overstimulating for me, but I'm getting a lot better at them, especially if it's just with one or two other people. So I'm going to say enjoys discourse sometimes, enjoys engaging in discourse sometimes. All right. So those are what I would say are my communication strengths and preferences. Number two, write down any activities that might match your strengths and preferences in number one. So right off the bat, I'm going to say reading and writing. And then I'm also going to say exercises, but not really like intense gym exercises. I'm more like walking and occasionally hiking. I walk every day pretty much, but hiking is something that I don't do very often, but it's something that I'm open to doing. So I'm going to say exercises like walking, hiking, possibly an exercise class. Okay. I also do enjoy dancing a lot when I'm by myself anyway. So maybe I would enjoy doing like a tango class or something. I'm not a very artsy person, but I do enjoy doing crafts, especially ever since I tried out this local pottery place that's local to where I live. It's where you can paint your own pottery. And it was a very calm sort of setting. It wasn't really social. I mean, it is social if you go at the right times. I think I went when they were close to closing, so there wasn't that many people there, which is honestly perfect for me because it's not overstimulating. But this place, they even host events sometimes where you can come paint pottery and then meet new people, and they have like organized activities. So I'm going to say crafts because that's something that I think is really plays on my introverted communication strengths and also something that I'm interested in. So it doesn't even have to just be pottery. It could be pottery. I know we have a candle making class somewhere, um, a cooking class. So I'm just going to say crafts. I think that's a good all-inclusive word. All right. And then I'm also going to write down Bible study because I already go to church every Sunday, but sometimes, if you are a churchgoer, if you're not a churchgoer, you might not, recognize this, but if you do go to church, you know that during the church service, it's not really ideal to socialize with people because you're there for the service. And then after the service is done, everyone's trying to leave, as quickly as possible so they can go get something to eat. So there's not much time to sit down and socialize. So I think a smaller study group is a place that I could meet a lot of new people. So I just said Bible study or small group. And I think that those are enough options for me. So number three, now we are going to pick at least two activities from number two that you really want to commit to. And I only say this because, sometimes as introverts, especially if you're shy and awkward, you're going to get overwhelmed if you have all of these events that you have to go to right away. So I would say just pick two or three, at least two, but two or three, however many you think you can handle, so that, you know, pick as many as you can that your social battery will allow you to attend. That's what I'll say. And for me, I would say probably, I would say crafts, I would say dancing. I'm going to say dancing slash exercise because those are kind of the same. And I'm going to also add Bible study, small group. So those are my three that I think I can actually commit to doing. And then number four is just to put those events from number three onto your calendar. And I want you to, plan out a 30-minute block of time where you can sit down and just put them in for the entire year so that you don't even have to worry about it going forward. You just do it once and then all you have to do is go to the events. And it's really simple if you use your Google Calendar or maybe you use your phone, the calendar on your phone, you can actually create recurring events or one-time events and just put them on your phone, set the reminder for, let's say, a day before and an hour before so that you don't forget. Um, and that way you don't have an excuse for missing it. And then number five, the most important step in this game plan is to actually go to the events, right? Because, as I'm sure you are well aware, you can make as many plans as you want to, but if you don't follow through on them, they're really just going to stay plans in your head that never come to fruition. So I want you to hold yourself accountable. Or if you need an accountability partner, you can just email me a photo of your game plan. Like just take a photo with your phone if you printed it out, or if you filled it out online on the Google Doc, on your copy of the Google Doc, you can just email me a view only link of it to Caroline at the introvertedmisfit.com. You can also find that email address in the description. And I will agree to send you 3 monthly follow-up emails for the months of January, February, and March of 2025. So I can at least help you, stay accountable 3 times in the new year. And that's, I'll do that completely for free. That's no big deal on my part at all. And there you go. So now we've got this really simple yet effective game plan that we can use in 2025 to become more social as an introvert and to start making more connections and making more friends and all of those good things. But of course, I know for some of you listening and watching that if you're still struggling with things like shyness or social anxiety or social awkwardness, even a basic game plan like the one that you just created, it can seem like a mountain to climb because you don't feel equipped with the confidence and the social skills to enact the game plan. And it can also be difficult to get out of this rut when you are just a naturally introverted person, because I found that since we tend to prefer being alone most of the time anyway, we don't always have an incentive to get out there and begin socializing and conquering our fear of social interaction because we're perfectly happy just being by ourselves, for 5 days out of the week. Um, and so if that sounds like you and you think you could use some one-on-one help with achieving your social confidence goals coming in 2025, I want to invite you to work with me as your personal coach who can help guide you through the issues that you're facing. So whether it's an issue with a fear of rejection, your conversational skills, your struggles with maintaining relationships, or something else, I'm going to extend the offer of working with me in my 12-week coaching program, which is called Communicate with Quiet Confidence. And it is a 12-week program specifically for shy, socially awkward introverts who want to become socially confident while still catering to their needs as an introvert. So if you want to work with me in this coaching capacity, you can check the link in the description, or you can just go directly to the introvertedmisfit.com/coaching, and you can read all of the information about the program. You can book your completely free 30-minute discovery call with me so that we can talk about your goals and see if you would be a good fit for this program. And again, all of those relevant links are all going to be in the description. And that is all for today's episode. As always, if you enjoyed this talk, please don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button, leave a review and/or a comment, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from, and share this episode with a friend, an introverted friend who you know needs to hear this episode. Thanks for listening and have a great day.